A few miles away, someone was running. The face was hidden in shadow, the hands streaked with earth and algae and filled with old forgotten things, toys and tapes and secret objects. Soft shoes skidded on moss, torn denim soaked in the mud, and a mixtape slipped. Another one fell in the grab for the first and was gripped in desperate fingers. Finally, the path came into view, and sweat-stung eyes blinked at the clearing. The box was open. It sat, dark and staring, the black center of an iris, bloodshot with roots and the threads of dying grass. Forcing reluctant feet, the runner tried to ignore how the littered creatures had burst apart, how the crow's feathers rasped like chalk on stone, and how the box's hunger and rage pulled at them like a rope being wound in with slow, terrible efficiency. Fighting tears, they prepared to throw new sacrifices into the pit, when tree roots coiled like tentacles around their ankles. The runner's mouth opened in a silent scream, and the sacrifices fell on the rotten ground, just short of the box. Leaping free of the root's grip, they heaved on the box's lid, trapping their skin as it fell. Blood spilled from the wound, and the forest's whisper swelled to a roar of splitting wood and screaming leaves. They fled, scattering the crows and throwing themselves, gasping, into the bright bloom of the forest. Behind them, the roots curled around the dropped and scattered things, and pulled them toward the box. That was from this book, The Sacrifice Box by Martin Stewart. And this was a book that I borrowed from my friend Nakia, who also gave it a very rave review on her channel, and I wanted to read it after she did, because her review intrigued me so much, and I did, and it was pretty great. So let's talk about it. I apologize if I seem incoherent. I'm filming this at like 2 in the morning, and I look like a fucking mess. I'm sorry. I need a haircut, but whatever. So this book is pretty interesting. It's a British novelist set in England, set in a British coastal town in the 80s. And the main character is September, or Sep to his friends. And he's a young boy that's partially deaf. I think he's deaf in one ear. And he has all these memories of the great summer in 1982 that he spent with his friends, his 4 other friends, where they discovered this mysterious box in the woods that they felt compelled to bring things to bring mementos to, and to sort of sacrifice to it, the sacrifice box. And in a dream, Sep was given instructions to repeat when they brought their sacrifices to the box, which are listed there on the cover. Never come to the box alone, never open it after dark, never take back your sacrifice. And 4 years later, in 1986, they're all sort of older teenagers getting ready to graduate, that kind of thing. And Sep is working on getting a scholarship to a big private school in the mainland, because he desperately just wants to get out of the island and kind of go off and live his own life. But he has all these great memories of the 4 other friends that he spent his summer of 1982 with, and but they've sort of drifted apart. They don't really speak to each other anymore. But then one day he's approached at work by all of his old friends, and they tell him, "Hey, something weird's going on. You must have broken the rules. That we're having all these strange visitations and visions and hallucinations, and so they blame him for it. But of course he didn't do it. So they have to figure out what's going on, who opened the box, and how to stop this curse from taking over the town. So as you can tell, kind of from that synopsis, and from the cover and everything, this is obviously very much indebted to the whole kind of 80s horror boom, the sort of retro nostalgia vibes of like Stranger Things, very indebted to Stephen King. In fact, it even opens with a quote from The Body. "I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, did you?" And so yeah, it sort of explores a lot of the same themes as that sort of stuff, as Stephen King's sort of classic era works. the friendships of childhood, the vividness of memory, how the things that we do when we're children sort of implant themselves onto us and sort of form us and make us who we are today, that kind of thing. So it is very derivative, kind of very indebted to its influences, wears its influences on its sleeve. But what I really liked about it was that I thought it was just executed really, really well and had a really unique setting, because I've read a lot of, I can't, there was a whole fucking subgenre, of books set in America about American kids, reflecting on their childhoods, Stephen King's It, Summer of Night by Dan Simmons, stuff like that. But this is set in a British coastal town, which is pretty unusual. I don't know of any of that sort of subgenre of horror stories that sort of do that. But it's really interesting, and it gives it kind of its own special flavor, I think, that sets it apart from a lot of from its influences. And the main thing that I just really liked about the book was that I just thought it was just really well written. As you can sort of tell from the excerpt I read there, the style is very erudite, very literate, very poetic. Reminded me of Clive Barker in parts, just in terms of the way that it mixed the visceral nature of the horror with sort of the poetic beauty of the language. And in fact, one of the other, it was just very vivid. The atmosphere is great. I could almost sense, smell the sea air and feel, the grease from the chip shops. I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. And one of the other things, going back to what I said before, is that this is marketed as a YA. I think on Amazon it said like 14 and up or something. But what surprised me about it was that it's really violent. It's really graphic. There's some really incredible set pieces. Because the whole thing about the sacrifice box is that it doesn't just screw with the kids, it kind of upsets the town as well. In typical Stephen King fashion, these supernatural events, affect the entire town and things sort of build to a head. And there's some really intense sequences involving resurrected corpses, zombified animals, and just some of the violence is like just so brutal. There's a scene where I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a scene where a woman gets scalped. A guy gets a piece of rock candy stabbed through his eye. Like, it's just really like brutal, but it's really well done and really visceral. The characters are all sort of archetypal. You've got sort of the Sepp is kind of the very serious, bookish, sort of quiet intellectual type. He's really into new wave music. He's always listening to music on his headphones. You got his best friend Arkle, who's the sort of the more goofy one. He's always like goofing off. He's sort of a class clown, a girl obsessed, that kind of thing. You've got Hadley, who's the girl, the love interest, basically. So but the thing about it, it doesn't break the mold, but I just thought it was executed really well. Just the overall atmosphere and the pacing, like it moves really quickly. It feels very cinematic. It's very, very visual. There's lots of really exciting, horrific action set pieces, and it just has that whole kind of like 1980s, like video nasty sort of flavor that makes it really enjoyable. And one thing that I also liked about it was that it takes place in the 80s, but it doesn't sort of blow its wad, like just constantly throwing 80s references at you. Like, of course, there is a lot of that, especially to like horror films and horror literature and things like that. But it's very minimal. It's really more just about the characters and the adventure and stuff. And I thought that aspect of it was really well done. It was just a very well-rounded, entertaining book that I just had a really good time with. I mean, I started it. I got like 30 pages in, and then I stopped for a while because I was busy with other things. And then I came back to it, and I read the whole thing over like one or two nights or so, just because the chapters are so short and it moves so quickly. It's very fast-paced and cinematic and fun. So if you're into that kind of stuff, if you like that sort of 80s flavored stuff, if you like it, if you like Stranger Things especially, this is basically British Stranger Things. So it's a lot of fun in that respect. It's not perfect, as I said. Like, some of the characters can be a little bit archetypal, not really developed much beyond their kind of their persona. Some of the characters get sort of short shrift compared to others. Like obviously Sep's kind of the main focus of the book, and some of the other four are sort of underdeveloped. I thought Mac, who's sort of this sort of jock type, who sort of drifted away from Sep and his group after he became kind of too popular to like to be seen with them. I thought he was a bit underdeveloped. I thought Hadley, the love interest, was kind of just okay. She was just kind of there to be a love interest, and she didn't really do much of her own stuff. But it was well written. Like the writing style was beautiful. It was, as I said, it was visceral. It was exciting. It was just very well executed. And sometimes you need that. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just need like a really well executed piece of just entertainment. And I thought this did that really, really well. And I thought Sep especially was done really well. I mean, he's not much more than sort of an archetype as well. As I said, sort of the bookish loner type. But his sort of loneliness and his sort of desire to have the same friendships that he had when he was 12, to have the same experience that he had with his friends, when he was younger. I mean, it's just done very well. It was very palpable. I thought it was very, 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 very well done, very moving. There's also some really sweet side characters. Sep works in a chip shop, and it's run by this gay Greek man named Mario, who's just really sweet. Like he's kind of like the silly foreigner, who like who's like very blunt, and like his English is a bit broken and stuff like that. I think that Martin Stewart does a really good job of like showing his friendship with Sep and his desire, and the fact that like he really loves and cares about him. They're just like really good friends, and that sort of like filial love just sort of shines through and makes him more than just a stereotype, in my opinion. It's just very sweet. And there's a lot of moments like that in the book, just emotional moments between Sep and some of the other characters that I just thought made it really sweet, and again kind of made the book all the stronger for me. So yeah, I mean overall, like while I didn't think it was perfect, and I could see some people just having some issues with it, especially if you're kind of worn out on this kind of like 80s nostalgia, Stephen King, Stranger Things kind of stuff. Maybe you wouldn't be into it, but for me, just the craftsmanship of it was kind of just what kept me reading. It was just fun to read, and it was just well written. If you're in the mood for that kind of thing, as I said, if you like this sort of style of story, I mean, really, that the vibe of the cover kind of gives you everything you need to know. So if you're in the mood for that sort of thing, I would check it out. Yeah, it's just a really solid piece of 80s flavored British horror entertainment, and I had a really good time with it. So so that was my review of The Sacrifice Box by Martin Stewart. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe and comment and do all that YouTube stuff. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.